So I think I've met many of you, but for those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Jones. I'm still relatively new to GÉANT. Joined last summer as EOSC Engagement Manager. And as part of the Infoshare series, which is a much wider program, we've done a series of 4 open science Infoshares. And this is the last one today, where we're going to be looking more at the data management services and looking at EUDAT services as an example of that with Mark van den Sanden. But just to let you know a little bit about the Infoshare series, the program's been growing here. We've got regular slots every week on a Wednesday where we're having these public Infoshares, and they're really intended as a space to raise a particular topic, help you gain more knowledge on that, but also to connect with one another and to have discussion around that particular theme. These Infoshares are always recorded, so you'll see the content going up online. So if you aren't able to attend one that you'd like to see, or if you have colleagues who are interested, you'll be able to get those on the GÉANT wiki. And also on the GLAD website, the recordings are made available in the eAcademy. And one thing just to flag, we are responsive to your needs here. So if there's particular topics you'd like to see on the Infoshares, do let partner relations know through Magda or through others in the group. And as I mentioned, what we have today is the 4th part of an open science Infoshare series. We do have ideas for more that we'll do around open science, specifically looking at the EOSC portal and how you can register services or act in the EOSC portal as a user. So that's something we'll do in collaboration with the EOSC Enhance project in the coming months. So I'll hand over to Mark now, who's involved in various EOSC projects and is going to talk to us about the EUDAT suite of services addressing researchers' needs when they're trying to share their data, when they're trying to collaborate across different boundaries.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I have to switch that. Yes, it's working. Yes, I'm Mark van der Zanden. I'm the technical coordinator of EUDAT, but also I'm a technical specialist from the Dutch NREN-Serve. And I will not describe the EUDAT services in all technical details, but I will describe the EUDAT services on basis of use cases which we have and which we have been implementing with communities. As a start, I will have a short introduction to EUDAT. I will introduce a few data management concepts. Then I will go through different use cases and then describing the services, how they are used, how they are implemented and used by the different communities. And at the end, I will also describe how we can offer those services to customers, and I will introduce a project on basis of which we can offer those services free at the point of use. Let's start first with the introduction about EUDAT. A little bit of history of EUDAT. It started in 2011, and it came forth from the basis that what we have seen from many different communities and engaging with many different communities, that they have very common requirements, but also already make use of very common services. Only they have been implemented very much to serve use cases of the communities, and therefore the communities have often make different choices to implement or choose technologies to implement those. And that becomes much more challenging. While most of at the time when EUDAT started, but it still is, the data rates are exploding, exponential growth on data. Communities are upgrading their infrastructure, their technologies, and therefore also they accumulate much more data when they started or were working with. So the basis of where EUDAT has started is to see how can we analyze what are the requirements from the communities, what kind of services, resources do they need, and can we develop on basis of these basic building blocks so that these can be offered to the communities and that they can implement, integrate, and make use of those services and resources being provided. And we started through different projects, but we have always seen an open mind to address and to take up requirements from communities which are outside of those projects, to really to see how can we take up a broad set of requirements on this. This is the timeline in which EUDAT has been evolving. The initial start of EUDAT, at that time it was not called EUDAT, but Parade, was in 2009. And that was also around the same time when a high-level expert report came out, which is Riding the Wave. And with this high-level expert report, it was really the emphasis on how data and the challenges with data management progresses also towards the future, and that it really was required to take action on how can you improve your data management practices. And on basis of this, EUDAT was formed, and it started as two projects. The first project started in 2011, and that was accomplished. Then we went towards the second project. But also looking at the second project and on the requirements from customers and communities on the basis of sustainability in the future, it was already seen that just providing services on basis of project funding was not really a sustainable method, and therefore to prolong the sustainability of the services and resources being provided, EUDAT set up a partnership agreement which has a timeline and an agreement of offering those services, but also sustaining those services beyond the project, independently from the project, for at least a period of 10 years. And many partners sign up, many providers sign up for this partnership agreement, and I will show the list of partners how will be organized. EUDAT has been very active in many different projects, European projects, also EOSC related projects, and one of the bigger projects is EOSC Hub, which started in January 2018, and that is finishing. It was originally finishing by the end of this year, but it has been prolonged for at least a quarter. But also in the time, having a partnership agreement, it was also seen that sometimes, certainly if you want to participate in projects, or if you have communities who want to have communities and customers who want to acquire those the EUDAT services, it was really needed that we needed a legal entity of being able to sign contracts. And therefore the EUDAT Ltd, limited company, was set up to function as a partner which can participate in projects, but also where you can have contracts being signed, for example, as SLAs being provided on the services. But it also hosts the secretariat for the partnership agreement, and I am a member of the secretariat as technical coordinator. And from January the 1st, just last week, also a DICE project has been started, which is on providing resources, but I will come back to this later in the presentation on how we can provide services and resources through the DICE project. This is a diagram which has been described in the Riding the Wave document, and that has been used within EUDAT very often to explain where EUDAT is fitting within the whole scope of the users, the providers of data, the communities which have their own responsibility in providing support and developing services towards their user communities, and the common data services. And if you look at where EUDAT is sitting, is more on the basis that we are focusing on providing common data services towards communities, towards users, but look at the integration of how these common building blocks can be integrated, can be used by research communities. And therefore, we have to see what are those common requirements and how does this translate across communities, and how can this be then defined within services. We work very much with many different levels of users, different organizations of users, where you see this as a diagram of the long tail of users, where the long tail is more defined on large communities which produce high volumes of data, but also towards the many individual users. So the homeless scientists, the small communities, the small research teams, also who want to do research and therefore need also services to be provided. And for EUDAT, we provide many different levels of services, and on this, we try to accommodate as much of the different types of users within our portfolio of services. EUDAT, as said, is a partnership agreement. It is a partnership across many different kinds of providers, where providers are generic providers, as for example, Service is a partner, and we are a generic service providers in the Netherlands, providing ICT research services for the research communities, and we collaborate with many of those providers across Europe, but also we have very much thematic providers which focus on a very scientific domain and represent the scientific domain within our organization. But most of them at the moment are providers providing already services, different kinds of services, or are hosting data and providing access to data. At the moment, we have 29 partners which are spread across Europe. We have partners which are in 16 different countries. And in this way, we can easily find also close collaborations between research communities, research organizations, which are coming from different countries. And we always try to find the best match, which is the best partner within EUDAT to serve an organization, institute, or customers or users coming from a country. So that is, I think, having those different partners from the different countries brought together very helpful. But I think that it's very similar if you look at GÉANT, which has also representation across Europe, serving their local customers. If you look at research data management, in general, research data management is complex. It is not just about storing some data, some files on the file system. You want to do more with the data. You want to analyze the data. You want to process the data, but you also want to ensure high quality on the data. And therefore, doing research data management is complex, certainly if you are collaborating with communities which consist of many different partners, where the data is heterogeneous or very much distributed across many different locations. So therefore, we are looking towards, okay, how can we provide building blocks, but also how can these then be used across within the communities to address their specific use cases. So the building blocks should be sufficiently flexible so that they can be used in different ways. Data management and storage services cannot be easily dissociated with computing. And that is one of the data management concepts, which I will describe later, is the research data lifecycle, where users will want to access, create some data, but also they want to process the data and they want to analyze the data, because only via this way they are able to produce resource output, which then again will be made available so that it can be reused. And for doing the computing part, for the processing analysis part, frequently computing resources are needed, because when the data is growing, then all this cannot be done just on the laptop from the user, but also additional computing resources and are then required. So connecting data management with computing is essential. And we also saw that certainly in providing data services, the project duration was not sufficient, because if you have a community which generates, for example, hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of data per year, and they want to store and want to make use of your service, they will not do this for just a project duration. They want to have to see a future where they can say, I can store the data, but I can maintain the data also beyond the project. So for us, it was always the case, how can we sustain the resource provisioning beyond project durations? And one of those is that we came up with the CDI partnership agreement, where we sustain, where it is agreed among the providers to sustain the EUDAT services and resources for at least 10 years, but also to have the legal entity so that you can also provide commitments on this service resource provisioning by providing service level agreements. As already said, where we are focusing on is more that because research communities will develop their own services to serve their own communities, but the focus which we have is not about that we want to develop specific services for one community, but more to generalize, to see what are the commonalities, what are the common features which are required, so that we can serve multiple communities. But that does not mean that the services which we provide should serve all communities. It can be a thematic domain with multiple communities making use of those services. This is an overview of the service portfolio which we have. From top to bottom, the B2Access service is an AAI proxy to provide AAI functionality across different services. We use this internally to enable access to our services. B2Drop can to be used as a data workspace. This is sync and share service where you can easily make data available, sync data to a central place, and make this available across different platforms. B2Save is a distributed storage system where you can implement data management policies, but also then implement these policies across different locations. For example, if you want to replicate data across different locations, it can be steered via policies, the registration of position identifiers, but also, for example, integrity checks on the data. So it is a flexible method of implement different data management policies. B2Share is a data repository service where you can describe data in different metadata templates, which can be tuned for different communities. And when you upload the data, then also the data is automatically made discoverable via, for example, B2Find, which is our metadata aggregator and search engine. The B2Stage is a service which provides APIs for allow data movement across different services. The B2Handle service is a PID service which can be easily used and integrated within many different systems for generating persistent identifiers. For B2Node, which is a central service for annotation, supporting annotation in different kind of services. The B2Node service Scanfox is, for example, already be integrated within our B2Share service. So it will provide annotation services in B2Share, but it can be easily integrated in other kinds of services so that you can allow annotation capabilities. EasyDMP that is for data management planning. And we also provide a GitLab service where you can maintain software repositories, but also integrate also this with CI/CD processing of maintaining the software. The first data management concept which I want to describe, I assume you already have heard about this, is FAIR. And FAIR is about making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that is one of the concepts which is, I think, very important because it enables better quality and higher quality of data, but also make data much more accessible. And that is certainly one of the concepts and the cases which EUDAT is very much supporting, us being a data management organization. So therefore we support fully the FAIR. And FAIR is then also implemented through different services. While, for example, for the findability, you can make data discoverable via B2Find service, accessible via B2Share, B2Drop, B2Save, interoperable, that is about how you want to implement metadata quality, which is then supported within B2Share. And reusable is if data is made accessible and easily discoverable, then automatically data is then also made more reusable. The other concept is the research data lifecycle. And that is looking at data through the whole process of doing research by planning your project, to design which data you need, from the creation of the data, discover which data you need, but also in the data processing steps, the data analysis steps, and then preserve the data for long term, making access to the data, but also enable the reuse of the data. And EUDAT is really focusing on to see how can you support the user and communities in the whole process of the research data lifecycle. From the research data lifecycle, we translated this in a more generic workflow, where we see the data lifecycle from the community point of view, but also from the user point of view. And this is very much, if you look at the diagram, which was in the high-level expert working group report, Riding the Wave, this comes very close to this similar diagram, because the communities will always look from their community point of view of how is data being generated, where is data being generated, how do we store this, how do I make this data available to my users. But then you have the user cycle, which wants to do research on top of this data. So how can I discover this data? How can I do the processing of this data, the analysis? But when I produce research output, is there any questions? Okay. Then the next step is how do I preserve this data, but also how do I make this research output then again available? So for my fellow researchers, but also in a broader sense towards other communities. And then the question is, how does this fit within the service portfolio of EUDAT? For this, we have been looking, as said, EUDAT is not directly focusing on the computing power, but it is much about linking the services which EUDAT provides with the computing power. And then you see where the different services are being fitted within the data lifecycle, where B2Save is more about preserving the data as a data archive, but implementing also automatically data management policies, while the data and the metadata can be made available through B2Share as a data repository, where you integrate and link this to persistent identifiers, provide capabilities on annotations, and when data is stored in a repository, the repository is automatically made discoverable for B to find. And if you want to do access to the data in your personal workspace, then you can easily make the data accessible through B to drop, which then is made available again to the computing platforms. So in this case, you can see that we try to fit in different kind of service and capabilities provided by the services within the whole research data lifecycle. And I try to explain this a little bit more through the different use cases which we support. If anyone has questions, at the moment I cannot see the chat. So if there are questions via the chat, I cannot answer these at the moment. I will try to do
we
this.
can pick them up at the end, Mark. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's just one about FAIR, but we can address that later.
Okay, that's good. The first one is really at the start, and that is about the data management planning. And what we frequently discover that certainly in the data management planning is that users start thinking about data when they are already active doing the project. Certainly if you want to preserve the data, they mostly think about this at the end of the project, because then they have to do something with the data. Maybe they have to move the data, archive the data, or publish the data, but they do not really start with thinking about this. And we discovered that it's really for us as providers, it would be helpful if more in advance we know about what kind of data is being produced and how this data should then be maintained after the user has done this project and made the data available or the publication available. And therefore, the data management planning is very essential. And we based the data management planning tool which we have on basis of the requirements for Horizon 2020 projects, because there's not only requests for data management planning specific to individual users, but also projects are requested to do data management planning. And then certainly for those kind of projects, the data volumes are much larger, and then certainly it is more challenging for providers to serve those requests. So it is very helpful to describe the data in a more detailed, also thinking about, okay, what will you do beyond with the data, beyond the project? And this tool is also about how can you make it more easier so that the data management planning can be integrated within the tools, for example, the services. Which services are being supported, so that you can easily select the service or request resources for supporting your project, so that the data management plans which are being described are more actionable, and that the services and resources can be provisioned in a more easier way to the users. And therefore, this has been done within the ESDMP service to make this more easier for the users. And the question is really about that for preserving the data is, I think for us, is not just during the project, but also really beyond the project. And therefore, it is really to think about further as what you need during the project. And that is thinking about, okay, what kind of data, but also think about, okay, what data should be preserved. Maybe not all the data should be preserved. Maybe a subsection of the data should be preserved. And then the way is, okay, how can it be used long? Because if you want to preserve all the data, it will be very costly. So scrutinizing the data to see only to that what should be needed and preserved after the project, so that it supports the research output. That is certainly one of the things which can be used for the data management planning. In this section, I want to discuss a few use cases. which are around data processing and data analysis. So how do you link different services to these capabilities? One of the use cases is from EPOS. EPOS is a seismology community, which is organized across Europe. And the scope which they are thinking is, okay, we have many sensors within Europe, because the basis of doing their research is our sensors which are placed across Europe to sense the vibrations within the Earth. And the sensors will gather this information. The information is located at 3 different organizations within Europe, which is the KNMI in the Netherlands, INGV in Italy, and GFZ in Germany. And they want to do processing on this data, because there are also time requests on this, because when something happens, some earthquake is happening, then you have a very peak volume of doing the analysis of the data, when the data is coming in immediately. And therefore, they need also processing power doing the analysis. We have been working with them, and the different organizations where the data is being collected are connected to partners within EUDAT, where the data is automatically replicated so that it also becomes close to computing power, because at the partners within EUDAT as SURF, KIT, and Seneca are large HPC centers where a lot of computing power is made available, but also where cloud computing is available for doing the analysis. Okay. And this is a more detailed diagram how the work is being done at my own site, where the data is being collected from the sensors in the Orpheus database. What we have done is connecting the Orpheus database to a BetaSafe instance, where the data is made available, where also automatically position identifiers are generated for the data being ingested. The data is then replicated to EUDAT on basis of policies, so that it is also automatically done, so that it is not once but continuously done. And then there are 2 different levels of processing being done. First, the processing is processing of the data itself on basis of what the community needs, because they are developing their own processing algorithms, and they are renewing the data on this with then the processing for the basis of the new algorithms. But then also the data is made available to the end user so that they can do the analysis. And the analysis which they are doing is done via Jupyter notebooks. So the data is made available via working space of the researcher, which is made available through BetaDrop. And the data within BetaDrop is made available within the Jupyter notebooks. So then they can easily do the analysis on the Jupyter notebooks. They generate output. This is then stored in BetaDrop, and via BetaDrop they can do other type of processing what they need, or even share the data with their colleagues within the community when they need it. So in this case, in principle, both cycles of how the community wants to work with the data, process the data, make the data available to the user, is sharing also how the process is done from the user point of view. In the next use cases are more focusing on the analysis part, the preservation part, and how the data is being provided access to the users again. And then we are focusing on the repository side, archiving side, and also on the workspace side as with BetaDrop. One of the communities where we are working with is CDataNet. CDataNet is a large community organized around many different data centers a total of 110 different data centers across Europe, looking at marine data. And the initial, how they worked was that all individual data center collects separately the data and is stored at the different locations, at the 110 different locations. And if you want to have access to the data, then you have to go to the individual center to request access to the data. One of the biggest challenges which they had was that there's a large variety of different centers, from big to smaller centers. What they were lacking was a computing facility to really do the analysis of the data which has been collected. But there was also a difficulty to get an overview of which data was collected across the different centers. We have been working with them by setting up what they call a cloud infrastructure, an EUDAT-based cloud infrastructure, where the data was aggregated from the different centers to 5 different places, which are based on EUDAT partners. The data is automatically replicated across all the places, so that it is also preserved at the different locations. If one center was not available, then the data is still available at the other centers, but also connected to computing facilities. So also the computing capabilities are increased for doing the processing and analysis of the data. In the step of doing the ingest of the data, they went through a data integrity check to preserve high quality of data before it was ingested in this cloud. This is a diagram of the architecture of the CDataNet, and then just more focusing on one of the centers, where they have a VRE environment, where they provide the different tools to provide easy access to the different tools, but the VRE environment has been integrated with the processing and the data platforms. And for this, we developed with them an HTTP API interface, so that you can easily integrate different capabilities via a single API interface. So you can access the data, you can process the data, you can steer also the access to the virtual machines to further work with the data. And when the data is then being finalized, you can store the data in meter-drop, so that you can further analyze, work, and collaborate and share the data with the different users. And that has been done always via a very similar process from the user point of view, and it provides an easy interface to the user because it is encapsulated, the complex infrastructure is encapsulated from a single user interface. One of the other use cases is Clarion. Clarion is one of the linguistics communities, which is in ERIC in Europe. If you look at Clarion, they have many different centers again across Europe, and one of the scope of Clarion is to provide services and capabilities towards their own user community. And one of the services which they have been developing is the language resource switchboard. And the language resource switchboard is a platform in which different tools are aggregated, provided by the different communities, so that you can provide an easy access to the services. And we have been collaborating with them to make also easy access to data. And on basis of this is they work out on an analysis where or processing workflow where data is stored. For example, is stored within meter-drop. Within meter-drop, users can easily select the language switchboard, and this makes happen that when the user selects the switchboard, the web browser will redirect them to the switchboard, including access to the data. So when a user comes to the switchboard, it can select one of the tools within the switchboard. When the tool is then redirected to the place where the tool is being operated, because that is one of the clearance centers, automatically the data, the link to the data is maintained, and the data is made available at the analysis tool of the clearance center where the analysis is being done. The user can then do the analysis of the data. When the data is being analyzed, output is generated, and what the user can do is then publish the data automatically in the Beta-share. So this will create a full cycle of doing the analysis from getting the data, analysis, processing, and making the publication available. The next few use cases I want to focus on sharing the data and making the data discoverable for example, via B2Find. This is in Belgium community, which is called Ingrid. Ingrid is already collecting different data sources within Belgium to make this available across their community in developing a portal where these data is being collected. One of the challenges which they had was we do not have really a platform where we can easily describe the data, maintain this data, and then make it available. We can aggregate information, but we do not have the tools for maintaining when we have aggregated or allocated the information. So we have been working with them with B2Share. B2Share is our data repository platform, and they use it as purely the metadata catalog. So they do not store data in our case, but they register the Ingrid metadata on the basis of their metadata template in our B2Share service. Via B2Share, the data is made available, but they want to make the data available on the basis of how they want to view the data towards the user. So they ingest the data in B2Share, they retrieve the data again in their portal, formulate the interface of the portal on basis of the data and metadata retrieved, and present this to the user. The advantage of having this is that the data is being maintained in a stable service, in a reliable service, but also at this level, the data can be made harvestable because B2Share is harvested by a B2Find. So automatically you have two things. You provide access to the users, but you may also make your data discoverable to other communities. One of the other use cases is a community-specific data repository. We provide services centrally as for B2Share, how it is used, for example, in the Ingrid use case, but also the services can be used and offered as repository services towards communities. They can have dedicated instances, they can have local instances, and therefore we can provide, for example, B2Share as an out-of-the-box repository to support the users. And one of our partners have done this, multiple partners have done this, but this is an example of one of our partners, which is EUDAT, which is a large computing center in Germany. And they have been working on defining a data repository for the Tor community. And they have been looking to see how can I describe the data for this community. Within EUDAT, we have defined a minimum metadata template, which is the basis, which complies also to DataCite and to the OpenAIRE standards. But the community wants to have more metadata. So B2Share technology is very flexible on this, that you can define different metadata templates within a single service, so that you can request different kinds of metadata on basis of the minimum metadata which is initially set to comply to different community needs. And again, when the data is being uploaded, the data and the metadata is made discoverable through BeDefined. Another repository which is very challenging, and that has to do with how to make sensitive data discoverable. Sensitive data is in general sensitive because that is, but making this data discoverable is challenging because not all the information can be made available, and direct access to the data is also not possible. With Be2Share, we support the use case that you can make metadata available, but access to the data should be requested and is maintained in a secure location. We have done this with the University of Oslo, which has been working on a TSD, which is a computing platform providing different kinds of computing and storage resources for sensitive data. It is a very secure environment. There are many processes for getting the data in, but also getting the data out, or providing access to the data or the computing platform for the different projects which they support. And we have been working with them to see if data is being generated within a secure environment, how can you make this data discoverable? We have set up processes. We support already within Be2Share different kinds of metadata templates where the users can describe the data. But what you can do is that you provide a link to where the data can be requested. So then the data is not physically uploaded, but you can provide a reference, and this reference is provided via position identifier, where the position identifier points to a portal where the users are redirected and there where they can request the data, so that they can provide access to the secure location where the data is being stored. And again, Be2Share is harvested by BeDefined, so the secure the metadata of the secure data is made discoverable. I think in this case you really show many different use cases and the flexibility which we can support within the Be2Share technology. That is also one of the things where we have been focusing on in all our services. How can you build a common building block, but is sufficient flexible to support different use cases? Then finally, I will go through how we can provide those services, because it is nice to have services, but it is also nice that the services can be used by users, by customers. And for this, we are looking at different levels of customers, which can be an individual user, as a single researcher, can be bigger or smaller teams, from an organization, from a community or an institute, supporting projects, but can also be, for example, larger communities, where you have longer term agreements in providing the service and resources to these communities. And for this, we have also different scenarios how we want to address these. One of the projects in which we can do this in a very easy way, also cost-effective way, is the DICE project. The DICE project is one of the Infra EOSC 07 projects. I'm not sure if any one of you know about these level of projects at the European level, but via the DICE project, we offer services and resources towards anyone who wants to request those resources through EOSC. And we can do this for the duration of the DICE project on basis of virtual access and free at the point of use. The DICE project consists of 23 partners. It is coordinated by our partner, Seneca. It has a 30 months duration, a total budget of about 7 million, and 60% of these of this budget has been reserved for providing resources virtual access. All partners have who participating in the DICE project, all provider partners within the DICE project, have been looking at to see which kind of services that we focus on data services can be offered to communities on basis on which requirements, and that can be offered through EOSC. And at the moment we have 18 provider partners which are spread across 11 European countries, and a total of about 50 petabytes of storage capacity is made available, but for different levels of services. And I will go through a little bit more detail on this. If you want to request these services, then they will be provided through the EOSC. Then you can request the services through the EOSC Service Catalogue. We have a number of services which can be used immediately because they are public to any of the users. For example, we provide B2Find, which is a public search engine. We provide B2Share, which is a public place where users can register and upload their data. But also we provide a public version of the B2Drop service. But those type of public services are public and available, but have some limited resource capabilities. For example, within B2Drop, any user can register, but has a maximum quota of 20 gigabytes to store. For B2Share, there's a fair share service, but the requirements for the data records, the data files are limited, for example, also to 20 gigabytes. If you have bigger requirements, we can also serve those larger requirements. And then we have two different providing chains, which is called as standard service or a customized version of the service. And standard is that if you have bigger requirements, but it falls within the scope of what we can easily provision from our partners, then this will be a standard service request. We can easily, quickly deliver those services and resources, and you can start up using. But if you have even more customized questions, or you want to have services which span across different providers, or go beyond what we see as a default default request, then we have to do a little bit more negotiation with you to analyze what the request is, but also analyze and negotiate this with partners to see which are the best partners in providing those services. And that will take a little bit longer to deliver those services. But in principle, within the DICE project, we can manage all kinds of order requests for services and resources within EUDAT. We provide for this the data discovery service. For example, if you look at B2Find, you can go to the service and search for the data. But if you want to make your data available through B2Find, we can manage this because you can submit a request, and we will discuss with you how you can make your data repository, how you can make your metadata discoverable through B2Find. We provide data repository capabilities, which can be on B2Share, but also we have partners who provide data repositories which are already certified. For example, they are certified according to the Core Trust Seal, so that you fall within that scope of a repository. And the B2Share, because the certification is linked to a very specific implementation of a repository service. It is not generic that every B2Share service has this, but if you want to have a B2Share service repository, we can provide this, and we can find which partner is willing to host this repository service for you. Or you can collaborate that you host this within your own environment. We have two different levels of data archives, which is a basic data archive, which is large storage capacity where you store the data, just storing. putting data on tape, or maybe in a cloud storage environment where also multiple copies of the data is being created, or you can implement data management policies. And then you will fall within the BetaSafe service, where you can implement the basic data policies as, for example, data replication, persistent identifiers, integrity checks, or you want to implement very specific policies, and we can collaborate and work with you to implement those specific policies. For the personal and project workspace, we provide also resources on different levels. For example, we provide the cloud storage with BetaDrop, but we also have partners who provide basic file system or object store storage, which can be used within your own environment. And the resources can be provided. And then a final, we are not focusing directly on the computing part, but in connection with the data, we can also provide limited resources for data analysis and for processing, so that you really can use the data storage in relationship to computing facilities. If you look at this is more or less the placement of the different services which we offer. If you look at, for example, the Beta handle, it is a little bit in between of the data repository and the advanced data archives. We provide also the PUD services, which is somewhere in the middle. And as already said, we provide the basic services as BetaFind, BetaShare, and BetaDrop, and customized standard versions or extended versions, which can be customized versions of BetaShare Premium, or for BetaShare, as we call it, for organizations, which are dedicated instances. We can provide via DICE repositories, which are provided by partners, which are not based on the BetaShare technology, but are based on technologies which are provided by partners, and that can be for certified, as a certified repository, or something for a sensitive data repository. And we can provide PUDs for you. BetaSafe for archival data, but also we can provide a BetaSafe instance for active data. The difference is for archival, then the data is stored, for example, on tape and multiple copies. Then you have a higher latency of access to the data. When the data is BetaSafe is for active data, the data stored is stored on a file system, and then you have immediate access to the data. So there are different variations in which we can provide these kind of capabilities for serving as much as possible the different use cases of our users and customers. This was the final slide. Any questions?
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. So we did have one question in the chat from Sylvia. It was when you were talking about fair data. She'd asked about how EUDAT's aligned with the initiatives for making research data and outputs more fair. And then after you'd presented, she had a kind of follow-up question about persistent identifiers and semantic interoperability specifically.
Okay, I see the chat. If you look at the FAIR is consisting of many different concepts. So and we try to address most of those elements within our services. For example, on the level of persistent identifiers, if you upload data within BetaShare, or register data in BetaSafe, then automatically persistent identifiers are being generated. In BetaShare, we can generate DOIs for the data sets, but also the files which are being uploaded. PDs are automatically generated for the individual files. For the metadata, we can support different levels of metadata. We comply with the core metadata to DataCite and OpenAir, because then the data can be harvested by B2Find, but also by other metadata aggregators, so that you support, in broader sense, data discovery. And for the semantic interoperability is that because adapting the metadata templates according to a data site OpenAIRE guidelines, but also collaborate with communities for community-specific metadata, then we support as much as possible the semantic interoperability according to the general use case or for via the community. I hope this answers the
Perfect.
question.
Thank you, Mark. That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay. Any other question?
Have others got things they'd like to ask around the services or the uptake? I know a lot of the NRENs have been involved in some of the services, like the data management planning tool, or obviously the links through SURF and the different services used there.
Yeah, my interpretation coming from the Dutch NRENs, the NRENs in principle try to place themselves in a similar position, but then nationally. If there are any gaps within the scope of what they can provision, I think we can very much collaborate with the NRENs to provide those services. But also what I have seen more general, certainly looking at the research communities, they're already much organizing themselves more globally, European-wide or even worldwide. And that's sometimes difficult to serve this type of communities from just the NREN point of view. But then EUDAT can provide a link so that the NRENs can point to us to work with them to serve the communities at larger. But what we also have seen is that some of the components are then also be translated to the local situation, as for example, the local data repository. If NRENs are seeking for a repository platform, this can be provided. We can collaborate with NRENs in providing those kind of services and capabilities. For example, also within a sync and share type of service, which is B2Drop. We have also partners who provide this for their own local university, or also on a national basis. So in this case, we can always collaborate with the NREN communities to see if they feel some gaps within their own portfolio, how it can be fulfilled on basis of the data services and the portfolio which we provide.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the use cases you showed demonstrated that need sometimes to work at a more global level, because there are, like with the EPOS and the CDataNet examples, there are, stations in different countries and they're needing to share the data across them and have a picture of what's collected in each place. There's a question just come up in the chat, one from Roberto Sabatino. He has a scenario where there's a single researcher who may benefit from these services. How do I get him in what he needs to happen in practice? So you did mention that you work at different scales, sometimes with, large groups or with individual researchers. What would be the main contact point for an individual, and how do they liaise with the EUDAT CDI?
I think it depends a little bit on the level of request. If there are basic requests where the individual researcher is looking for a platform for storing his data or share data with a small group where they're still working and collaborating on this, they can go to B2Drop, register themselves. So there is no immediate request for us to work on this, but they can go directly to the services, registering and make use of the services. That can also for the other collaborating partners within this team to do this. If they have higher requests for more capabilities or for more storage capabilities or more type of features, then he can go to EUDAT. Request to request this. That can be via EUDAT website, where he can submit a question to this. That will fall within the help desk, and we engage with him to see what is needed, what are the requirements, and if it falls within, for example, the DICE criteria, then we can also support the provisioning of the resources on basis of DICE in a more easier and more cost-effective way, at least for the first 2.5 years. So I think then it would be good that the AMRIDs know about these channels, and that they know about the portfolio of EUDAT, so that these know how they can serve them. For the individual researchers, B2Drop, B2Share, and B2Find, I think are the easiest services, because they can be immediately used and accessed. Higher requirements, please point them to the EUDAT website, or take up the request, and the ANRAN will contact us via EUDAT website, that we start up the collaboration via this chain.
Excellent, thanks, Mark. And there's another question by Owen Kenny, asking whether the EUDAT tools can be implemented nationally and then federated with the EUDAT service.
Yes, that is in principle the basic case, because the services provided within EUDAT are provided by the partners, which are nationally organized. For example, SURF is the Dutch NRAN. We have partners within Germany and other countries, which have their, next to being partner in EUDAT, have their own local provisioning and their local scope for providing the services. And then it is also easy to, for example, become partner within EUDAT, to join the EUDAT CDI. And then you can easily federate the services across the EUDAT partners. So yeah, that is easy to do.
Excellent, thank you. And a final one here from Ildiko from Kifu. He's interested in the planned cooperation or information about the starting of the DICE project and potential collaboration with other ongoing EOSC projects. He's involved in the NI4OS for Europe, that regional project.
The DICE project already started, because that started on the 1st of January. So you can already engage with us on the DICE project and to discuss further possible collaboration, to see what kind of services, what are the use cases, and how can we address those. You can request this via the EOSC portal if you have already specific services in mind which you want to use, because the services are already listed in the EOSC Service Catalogue. If it is more on the project level, then you can contact the EUDAT Secretariat, or send a question through the EUDAT website, and then that will be picked up by us from the Secretariat to discuss possible collaborations. For a more automated function of these collaborations within EOSC, I think we are more or less waiting also on the EOSC Future project. So because more of the core developments are done within the EOSC Future project, while the DICE project is one of the satellite projects providing resources.
Excellent, thank you. I was also interested in what you said at the start about essentially your sustainability model, making sure that you can maintain the services over 10 years, and how that led to setting up the kind of the CDI and the kind of EUDAT Limited. And I was interested in the business model for this. So when you do get more complex service requests, you get the kind of customized services or the extended models. How do you administer that? Because you mentioned about picking the right partners from the EUDAT collaboration. And I'm guessing every partner brings their own resources in, but sometimes something may be, coming from a different community, which it's not their remit to serve, or from a different country. And I wondered, what your model is for kind of reimbursing that.
that for the reimbursement aspect, it is more within DICE. There we have identified which are the partners, but also which kind of resources they will bring in. Basis of what are the costs, what are the units in which the services are being administrated. Within the DICE project, we make use of central EUDAT services to administrate this information, but also collecting accounting figures so that you know, okay, how much usage is being used by a certain project, by a certain user on a certain service, and then that these can be reimbursed via virtual access. That is mainly within the DICE project. If it goes beyond the DICE project, we can have also contracts with customers on basis of SLAs, and then it is on those are paid contracts where we discuss with the customer which are the best partners. We are seeking natural relationships between the customer and the partner, for example, on basis of nationality or within the community domain. And then the agreement can go through EUDAT as basis of a paid contract and SLA. But if there are very close collaborations which can be naturally solved, then this can also be done by the partner itself, so that they have national agreements, bilateral agreements between the partner and customer.
Excellent, thank you very much. Does anyone else have questions to raise about either the concepts, the data management concepts, the lifecycle fair, or how they can be addressed to meet different research community needs, or the UDAT service implementation? We're very quiet today.
Yeah. So the questions can also, I think, coming directly via speaking and not only the chat.
Yes. And they can, I mean, if it takes longer to form the questions, if you're doing follow-up after this, I'm sure Mark's amenable to receiving emails if you have specific follow-up questions too.
That's no problem. Email address is at the bottom of this, was at the bottom of the slide. I assume that the slides are also shared somewhere. I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah. Ildiko, you put on your video. Would you like to ask something? No? We don't hear you if you're speaking out.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm a she.
Yes, sorry, apologies for that.
And I've been following your events for a while, Sarah, and I'm very pleased also with this one. And thank you very much, Mark, for the interesting presentation. It's very useful also for Kifu. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And apologies for my error. Sometimes it's hard when you're just seeing the black screens and trying to recognize who different people are. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, then I would like to just thank Mark again for this. To remind you all, these are being recorded, so we'll get the content up online very shortly. I think there are InfoShares next week. Magda, I don't know if you want to update people on what's coming up in the next couple of slots.
From my side, thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure to present.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for being part of the series.
You had a busy day, Mark.
Yes, it is not yet finished.
See you soon.
I'm
See you
here.
soon, yes.
Sorry, just Sarah asked me about the next week. So we have a very populated InfoShare Wednesday next week. It's on the quantum communication general concept. So and then all the info is on the wiki page, where probably most of you found information about this one. So we always update it, and we put under the past events all the relevant information as slides. So the slides from here will definitely be there, as well as the recordings. And if you have any questions, please also feel free to contact myself or partner relations or any of us.
Excellent. Okay, well, hopefully see some of you at further InfoShares. Thanks once again to Mark. and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice rest of the
Bye-bye.
afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.